Hi, I'm Marcus, and welcome to the License to Kill podcast, where pest control professionals meet cutting-edge expertise, industry insights, and a whole lot of camaraderie. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey as a PMP, this podcast dives into everything that makes our industry tick. From advanced techniques and groundbreaking products to hilarious field stories and the real talk about the challenges we face in our industry. Join us as we explore the science, art, and community behind pest control, celebrating the people who work tirelessly to keep our world safe, healthy, and pest-free. As always, stay sharp, stay connected, stay legendary. Let's start the show.
All right. So, basic entities: cephalothorax, pedipalps, chelocerata. I'm going to tell a story when I was younger, going to one of these talks. We had a guy, I'm not going to name names because he's still doing things, got very upset because a technician called him palps and not pedipalps. Let's just be aware of our audience with that because some people are sticklers. Palps, pedipalps. With me, it's either one. Yeah, so the pedipalps can be used to determine sexual identity. So the males are going to have always pedipalps or augmented pedipalps, but the females are going to have inner daintier palps. Did it not move over the pedipalp slide? Give me 1 second. It's not moving over the pedipalp slide. I apologize. This is not looking good at all. All right. Did it jump over for you guys?
Yep. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I'm going to do a different screen then. We'll choose this one. All right. So we got modified pedipalps here and thinner dainty ones over here. Male and female, different like that. Using courtship, using mating. Some species are using to hold up part of the adding part of the legs. Other ones using the dance and all that kind of stuff. Can also be used with scents and chemical detectors and smell organs. Just a whole lot of information going right there. Now, a way that I've always used to identify that doesn't always go well for everybody else because you have to get really close to them has always been the eyes.
Yeah, I always hear about the eyes. So,
yeah.
Kind of explain, do the eyes tell something about the spider, like about their nature or how they behave?
The thing is, if you guys are going to notice these guys here, what stands out about these guys that are circle?
Big front eyes.
Big front eyes. Those are actually going to be hunting spiders. That's your wolf spiders, your jumping spiders, and then your net casting spiders. They're going to be actively hunting for their food. They're going to be looking for that. They're going to be needing the eyesight. What's real fun is about your jumping spiders is their eyesight probably about 2 steps down from ours. So it's pretty strong. And I'll get in more detail about the hunting spiders later on, the jumping spiders and all that stuff. But eye patterns are how you can start telling these guys apart. More so than, looking at them and seeing the, patterns of the abdomen. Some of us don't see colors as well as others. Some of us, can't see them. Sometimes you don't get a whole specimen. Another one. Look at that brown recluse there. 1, 2, 3 pairs there. You have those 3 pairs of eyes compared to all these other guys that have multiple eyes. Now, when you're looking at the brown recluse, you can see the brown recluse based off the abdomen and the fiddle shape or violin shape or that pattern on there. But if it's damaged and you look at the eyes, brown recluse eyes are a good one. And then you have all these other different species here that give you a look into their eye patterns and taking close up. Now, not always great in the field, especially if the spider's alive or you don't have the proper magnification. But if you do get it back to your office, get a nurse scope, or it's dead, you can get a look at it. The eyes are a great way to go on and identify from there. Spinnerets, these are silk-producing organs and manipulators. Right there, what everyone wanted to see tonight. Nice close-up of the spider's butt. And then
Good
web
shot.
types, another way. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a good shot.
Another way of identifying these spiders, which doesn't always work too well, is going to be web types. And we'll vaguely go over that. and you got like your 6 main ones. There's other types, there's subtypes, but you get your spiral webs, which is what everyone kind of thinks of. Charlotte's Web, big nice spiral, webs, common, web everyone thinks about. That's coming from like your oar weavers, your long draw spoilers, your hackle weavers. And then here we have the example of that. And one thing we noticed about spider webs is the spider is eating that at some point next morning, later that night, depending on type of spider,
Oh,
when
they
it's prays
re-ingest
out.
the silk.
Yeah, they re-ingest it mainly because that's a caloric dense uh, thing to do to build this web. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy to produce the silk. So they eat that and repurpose it. One of the ways they found out about that is they actually put radioactive dyes or tracers on it before the spider ate it, and then they were able to process it. The spider was able to process it all, and then put it back out, and they were able to track it again.
Hmm.
It's eating it, it's putting it back out, it's just not leaving it, which kind of leads to us to control, which we'll go highlight that. So remember webs being a a need for these spiders to take their food, but also it's a labor cost for them.
Right.
Remember that when
So,
we talk about
if they're
habitat
the ones that
control.
we most commonly see, are those ones mostly active, or do we see them abandoned just because they got killed, or um, like are you how like what is the propensity of them to reconsume the web? Is it very high, or will they do that just occasionally if food is scarce?
It should happen. Um, Now it also depends on activity, things like that, damage to the web, you know, how much food is showing up, how much is not. Um, but like when you're seeing like a discarded web, especially if you're actively treating somewhere, you've
Mm,
probably killed the spider some way, or it's been something predated on the spider,
mm.
and it kind of builds up from there, or the spider's been forced to move on. Which stressors are something we're going to talk about with control later on. Stressing the spider does a way of harming these guys and slowing them down. And then we get, Tangle Web, which got a great design by this lady there. Your common Tangle Web, which is kind of where we get to the point of identification by web can be difficult because a sheet web, a tangle web, things like that, you know, they all look kind of messy. But at least if you can have a little bit of a web, kind of start pointing in directions if you can't find the spider. And then you can, move from there. Like it's always, it's not as always easy as a funnel web.
Yeah, I've
You
seen
know,
some funnel webs
your
before.
funnel web shoots straight into there, it makes that nice funnel shape. You can get the spider for that. You know, funnel webs, funnel web spider. Like I said before in previous talks, we're not great at being imaginative with names. It looks like a funnel. It looks like a tangle. It looks like, this, and that, and everything. So if it looks like something and like, oh, that seems like, oh, that can't be that easy of a name, it usually is that easy of a name.
I don't
And not to be
overthink it.
saying, well, tubular
That's a good
webs. I
CA
mean,
test tip, right? Don't overthink it. A lot of times
yeah.
it's as exactly as simple as it looks.
I think when you guys are testing for your licenses, I know the states I've had to test in and I've written study guides for, it's just that simple when they ask questions. They want you to overthink them. Another thing we get with these webs is a sheet or funnel web to a tubular web. There ain't much difference. It's just location. This is in somewhere. It's kind of there. So not always the best indicator of the spider. But if you see a web, you can poke around in it, see what comes out, all that kind of thing for it. Even with your sheet web, it's a sheet. It's
Yeah,
not
it
that
kind of looks
great.
like
And
a
it's
hammock.
yeah,
Little more organized than the tangle one, but
yeah. But then again, they say that's a way of identifying them. I personally never used webs all that often for identification. I've always been bigger on eyes and patterns like that. But some people get really good at it, and that's what they used to do. They can tell you what kind of spider it is after it's the webs that spider's not there. You can give or take that with how accurate they are. But some webs are more obvious than others. A sheet web to a funnel web, you can give it and get it down. But angled a sheet or things like that, it just gets to that. Now we're going to cover a few spiders here. The medically significant ones. Boom, boom, boom. So your brown recluse, black widow, and sac spider. Sac spider is not as significant as the other two.
yeah, I was gonna
Now,
say
depending on what study you're reading
I
and
actually
how far
don't
back you
really
look.
feel like
I'm
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
familiar with. I actually was gonna say I don't really feel like I'm familiar with sac spiders personally. Down here in Texas, we deal with a lot of brown recluse and a lot of black widows. In fact, I took a really good picture of a black widow the other day. Uh, but I'm interested to see some good photos that you got of that.
But sac spiders, there is, it's black widow, brown recluse, and then long down the line, sac spiders. Now they say most, depending on what university you go to, what study you're reading, they'll say like most common bite is from a sac spider. Now I got some stories about them when I was younger that I'll tell when I get to them, but yeah, kind of happens, but they're just not in the same wheel well. They're not in the same severity. It's a bite and it happens, but it's not a you know really significant thing. But we'll start with brown recluse. And brown recluse, my Latin's terrible, but there it is for you. And the biggest indicator that you guys are going to see is always going to be that violin or fiddle shape, depending on what part of the country you're from. What do you call it? But fiddleback is a common name, or another
Yep.
not so common name for it. But that obvious shape there of the stout neck, the shape of it all, and there you go. Now, sometimes that can get messed up because you can see wolf spiders, nursery spiders with shapes on the cephalothorax. It's not not always the case. It's a very predominant one. Color can vary. Sometimes they're a little darker. Sometimes it's a little lighter. But that violet or fiddle shape, if aren't 100% sure and it's a dead specimen, you can always look for the three pairs of eyes on them to identify it. Like we said, three pairs, a total of six eyes. 1, 2, 3. They're going to be stacked together. 3/8 of an inch to 3/16 of an long, thin, long legs, nice bulb on the abdomen there. And again, like I said, the color can vary from darker to light, but there's that guy there. Yeah. Gender unknown till after the first molt, so you can get that. And about the size of a quarter. Males tend to have longer legs and smaller bodies. And that's going to be common a lot with spiders and insects is the males are not as significant as the females. Females
Where
in the
where are these guys hanging out? Where are they spending most of their time at?
I mean, they're true to their name. So they're going to be in areas behind uh, like couches, TVs, uh, old boxes of stuff. So one thing we always kind of recommend here is when you're pulling out your winter gear, it's always shake it out. If you have a box of sweaters or you have a linen closet where you keep your winter blankets, shake those stuff out before you get to it. If you renovated your attic and part of that is half attic, half living space, you want to shake that out. I have yet to ever see a brown recluse in my house, but I keep a pair of outside boots in the garage. No matter what time of year it is, no matter what's going on, before I put them on, I always bang them on the ground, shake them out, and check them. They're going to be in those areas. So if you're going into a chest full of linens or almost anything, you know, be aware of what's going on in there. And these spiders aren't seeking to bite you, maliciously or coming after you. They're feeling threatened. So you're reaching down in there, you're getting a hand on something, and the spider feels like it's going to be crushed, and so it's biting. So think of their name. They're very reclusive. They're going to be in those areas. And you can have large populations. You can have established populations, wall voids, attics, those kind of areas. And with spiders, they're walking off the ground. It's a little bit of an issue to effectively treat them, which is why I'm going to talk about habitat management and, you know, focusing on the prey items over trying to directly affect these spiders in a lot of cases. Yeah. So here's our established populations. Now we have the one we're worried about here. The one that we're focused on now is the blue. Now we have other species throughout the U.S. and other areas, but typically, if you are operating in an area and they say they got bit by a brown recluse and you're outside of the blue, take that with a grain of salt, especially if you can't see the specimen. And that's not to say that it can't travel. It can have moved. It can have, had anything happen. And this map goes back and forth. You can check other maps. This is a World Population Review. I've seen other maps that cut Indiana in half, and they won't have them. I know some people in Indianapolis who have never seen them, and I'm down, here, and we get them all the time. My own parents' house have them. Thankfully, I don't have them at my house. My wife would kill me if I did.
Oh, we
You know,
definitely have them way down here. I'll tell you that. Yeah, we're down in the
Yeah,
Houston area, Cove Coastal
there's no
there.
reason for them not to be spreading everywhere. They do pretty well in our human habitats, but it's going to take them time. We might see expansions. I remember when I first started, this map was smaller. It was more of a bisecting more states in those areas.
So to ask the
Right.
dumb question, right? Like, let's just pretend we're talking to fifth graders for a moment. Why do we care about brown recluses? What makes them so important? Why are they dangerous? Right?
Yeah.
What's going on
Yeah.
with these
Let
guys?
me go ahead
What?
and there we
Why?
go.
Oh,
I'll
there it
jump life.
is. Of
Yeah, I'll jump
course.
life cycle real quick and get into bites and symptoms. So the symptoms can vary person to person. Some can be slight, some can be severe. And so it's a necrosis bite. So you get bit, leg, torso, and thumb, and in about 6 hours, that middle spot is going to start turning black, and it's going to rot away at things. And most of the people do all right; they survive. We've had one death in my area in the past 15 years. A guy was camping, got bitten on his leg. He let it go, kind of went to like a septic area issue, and he eventually died. But as you can see, I mean, if you have that much dead tissue going on, you know, and these people, when they do recover, they're going to have like a divot in their leg or their thumb.
Yes.
So this guy's going to be missing a chunk of flesh. I had a professor, his son-in-law got bit, and he would always talk about his son-in-law being able to lift his shirt up and just see a little divot in his stomach where he got bit.
Yep.
But it's not to say every bite is always going to be loaded with the same amount of venom or any of that kind of thing. Um, it is a burden on the spider to make venom. That requires calories, that requires energy. So to always have it going and using is not always the best thing. Some bites, just seeing what's there, testing it. But other times, yeah, they can bite and cause these problems. Let me see what I have
So,
next. Okay.
funny enough, the reason why I was wondering if you had any pictures, my mother actually got bit by a brown recluse one time, changing like lingerie in a kind of like a bulk warehouse department place, and she ended up. It was like right there on her waistline where the bite and it spread quite far. It made a very deep gash. I mean, obviously, it took out a lot of tissue and some pretty deep scarring and stuff. And I remember that it was pretty intense bite wound. And I remember at the time, being a little bit younger, not being like, oh, it's just a spider bite, and then like you said, just several hours later, it was, starting to become very serious, and she obviously, had to seek medical help and stuff. So, uh, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, with these bites, think once they start getting, they have the issues, think staph infection,
Yes.
which in a lot of hospitals, they will, if you go in and say you got bit by a spider and you show any kind of necrosis or any kind of rot, they're going to assume brown recluse, and it might just be an infected spider bite. So it could just be staph. But
Yep.
we'll touch on some things life cycle wise. So this is going to be dependent on your environment. So this isn't a set window. This can change. If you're in a warmer area, it can be a little earlier. It can go a little later. But typically May through July. We see ours kind of pop off in June or in my area. Now, probably closer to May for you guys down south. About 50 eggs at a time. Spiralings emerge in about a month. Yeah, where's that month there? Yeah. And thrive in human alternate environments, basements, attics, crawl spaces. Think of those areas where we have left voids and we have left areas where it's conducive for pests. So what
The
do
dark, creepy
pests and other things need?
crawlies. Yeah.
They need food, water, harborage. So the harborage is our homes. The food is the pests that are coming in. And the water is the same water we bring in. Live up for 2 years. 2 years of a female laying eggs, it's less than 2 years of that. But males are known to actively seek out females. Here's one good thing when you guys are monitoring for things. You have your glue traps out, and you're using your glue traps to, kind of source in where the infestations are at. And you've been doing it for a while. You're getting some good results. You're taking care of it. When you guys start seeing more females out on the glue boards, that means the females are coming out for food. The females are having to be more active. The males aren't seeking them out. The males aren't bringing them nuptial gifts. So the
Mm.
population is not as healthy as it could be if you're just getting
Stressed.
males.
Right. Sign of
But you start
stress.
seeing those females, you're going in the right direction. Now nobody wants no client wants to be like, oh hey, good news, it's all females and a couple males. They're just saying brown recluse. Or sorry, yeah, yeah, exclusion.
I've never seen them in numbers. That's actually pretty interesting to see that what you're talking about, that they actually can have an established population in larger numbers. I'm sure that in a more wooded environment, we're in an urban area, so oftentimes we tend to hear about them seen in like onesies or twosies nearby wood piles, or like you said, by the shed, the barn, outdoor. Sometimes in a crawl space or something like that. So we don't. I don't. Typically think of brown recluses as being you know in numbers, but that's actually a really good tip to know.
Yeah, we definitely get them in numbers in the Midwest region. We got a lot of wooded areas, even behind my own house here. Nice wood line, um, all that kind of fun stuff. Different environment. So down south, less likely to have fireplaces going as long, so the wood piles might be as big. It
Right.
just all that could tree lines, different kind of trees, different kinds of environments for them, and we can get very large established populations here. Where we're telling people if you've had an established population and you start seeing one or two, that is a good thing. Like we have to tell people here, like they are a native species. They are here.
Right.
They live here. If they were as
Need to see some.
dangerous as everyone thinks they are, they're still dangerous. Don't want to downplay that. We would have more issues with how common they are. Like they are a spider here. You're going to see a brown recluse in your lifetime, in any year in this area.
Right.
But exclusion helps. It's the same kind of way of any kind of pest. So if you're doing that, just think, how do I keep pests out? Because if you're keeping pests out, you're keeping their predators out. And use plastic bags, use totes. Keep your items sealed when you're storing them in the garage, the basement, the attic space. Keep your wood pile away from the foundation of the house. Keep it away from the entry doors. You know, don't give them a habitat right next to your door. We have plenty of people who, they don't want to get cold in the winter and they're running their, fireplace. And so they'll put the wood pile right next to their, basement door or right next to the outside door. Well, congrats, you've given insects and spiders a great place to hang out where it's warmer, the environment's different, and they come right into your house whenever you open the door. So move your wood pile away. Keep all that kind of stuff away. And if you go to a client's house and the wood pile's there and there's a bunch of leaf litter, these are
Yeah.
easy things you
Yep.
guys can start working on. Tell them like, hey, let's get rid of this leaf litter. Let's move the wood pile out. I know you'll get cold, but
And we're getting a
bring some
lot of
in.
cold snaps right now. We're getting a lot of snow right now. It's moving across the states. So, you know, beware. Customers are doing it.
And they're not going to think of it. They're just thinking it's cold, and I don't blame them. The last thing they're going to think about is, the spiders that could come in. But, they could bring a little bit of wood in first, keep it in a separate area. Or maybe if they're going to keep a wood pile, put it in totes instead of having it stacked up outside. There's options for them. There's other things they can do. Only, bring it in as soon as you're going to use it. Don't leave any sitting in the house. Don't leave it next to the house. Glue boards, control. Glue boards, wood pliers. You guys know, your formulations to use. You got things that are going to be a faster knockdown. You got concentrates that are going to be slower, give you a more of a residual. But, one big thing we always have, pyrethroids are still good. Depending on your state and what they're allowing, gives you different options.
A lot of
And we
people
have
in our group have been talking about Onslaught Fast Cap. It uses Esfin Valerate, I think, is one of the pyrethroids, which is, we're taught to always think thrin, anything that ends in thrin, is kind of a pyrethrin or a pyrethroid, and that tends to be the case, but not all the time. Um, but yeah, can you talk on anything about like as far as like cap products or any of the different like residuals or something that about the pyrethroids, any like effective use of them particularly?
what I'm always going to recommend with the chemicals you guys use is, yes, we're there for spiders, and we're talking about spiders right now. But the spiders are there for a reason. And they're there to feed on something. Your pyrethroids and everything like that, and your micron caps and your slow release formulations and all those gambits of chemicals we have, you know, think of it as applying it to the prey item with the mindset of taking down the prey item and removing. food source and then stressing the spider out. And then any kind of bonus you get of the spider coming in contact with your wettable powders or your micron caps or your pyrethroids is going to be, extra because of how the spider walks. It's not always coming in contact the same way a roach or an ant
Right.
or another insect is.
Right.
They're a little bit raised off the ground, a little higher. They sit a little higher.
Right. They don't drag their bellies the way that like
Yeah, they're not
roaches and
sitting on
stuff do.
there. They're not going for it. And even
And their
your
mouth
brown
parts are
recluse is
different, right? They don't really do grooming in the same way.
yeah,
They have piercing,
yeah.
biting mouth parts, right?
Like you have your mouth parts that are sitting a different way. They're not doing the same kind of things. They can probably run the front legs through. If they really have something going on, but they're just not acting the same way as a insect pest.
Right.
So think of them as the um,
Byproduct of
center
like
they are.
regular pest control. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Control
So it's
control
it's
the
part of
food
your
source is a better way to control the spider itself.
yeah. So you look at that environment. So if we're dealing with an area that is conducive to insects, there's going to be something eating those insects. So if there's a moisture problem, controlling the moisture problem, limiting the moisture problem is going to go a long way to remove everything. If the environment is there, they're always going to have a pest problem. If a pest problem is there, the likelihood of them having a predator problem of those pests is going to be higher. Spiders, centipedes, all those other things, anything that can prey on them is going to start showing up as well. And so, you want a slower release formulation, especially if you're trying to do long-term control. So if you're working on a quarterly type issue, or you're just trying to, lower the population over long term, the micro caps, um, like the man on the outside.
Yeah.
Yes, if the label says doesn't say spiders, you're not treating for spiders with that chemical if it doesn't say spiders on the label. But the spiders aren't going to be there unless they have a food source. So you're not, while you might have made a contract that says spiders and it might be what they're focusing on, but always think there has to be a reason the spider's there. The spider's not feeding on, nothing. There is a food source in that home, in that building for the spiders.
So
In spiders, you're
if
treating the
you're
home.
depending on the kind of spider that you're dealing with, whether it's a web building or a like a jumping spider or a wolf spider, might also help you figure out and target what the food source might be.
Yeah, that's you have to look at it that way. It's like, what is bringing them in. So, and these guys can feed on, many things. Larger spiders can even take down, bigger items. But with focusing on these guys, think the crickets, think the beetles, the ants, and those little, smaller guys. So if they are feeding on ants, likely not, if they're in the house, there's a food source for them in the house. If they're, you know, feeding on some kind of ground beetle, they might have a moisture issue along the foundation. You know,
Right.
think of it not just as the one thing that we're focusing on, but the bigger, the web of life and the circle of life that they're all dealing with. They got to have something to eat.
Right.
We'll go ahead and swap because
Ah.
controls going to keep going on here. So we'll come out. Now, like you said, we have a web building spider, and it's going to be a little different. We have our black widow, which honestly enough, around here, our black widows aren't as active near people. So we'll see those guys more in garages, sheds, and areas like that. People adjacent, but not as close.
See,
So you got
crazy
them.
enough, I do a park, like a playground park, that has
Yeah.
a concrete or no, it's like a brick wall that lines the back side of it, and I have rodent boxes that are over there, and I posted it on my LinkedIn a couple days back. I took a good photo of it, and man, I must have seen like 20 or 30 of them that day. It
They
was like
love them. They
one in like
love
every
retaining
box.
walls
Oh,
and
yeah.
artificial rocks. Yeah. We a few years ago we pulled probably 10 or 15 from my parents' neighbors' landscaping because they had the artificial retaining wall. But they love those fake voids. They love those kind of areas. Insects get up in there, they put their webs. But yeah, big way of seeing these guys is right here. Now,
Well,
sometimes it doesn't always work. With that, you got your southern, you got your false, you got your northern. There's a gambit there of black widows, and that things that get called black widow and all that. So you got to be familiar with your region and the black widow that's predominant in your region, and that can you can have some overlap there. We see more northern, we sometimes see southern. You can get brown widows. It's a fun little gambit there, and that's going to be dependent on knowing your geographic area and knowing what overlap you have, and hopefully you guys aren't dealing with a lot of transient back and forth of people moving from one area to the next and bringing in their stuff. But it does happen. But some of us may be treating zoos and they get a little off topic, but you get things brought in from other areas and get stuff introduced, and they can only affect that environment. But yeah, I'm always a big proponent of knowing your area the best you can, and if you don't know something outside of it, that's what people are for in other areas. It's like, oh hey, you came from this. Let me ask somebody in that area. Not you don't need to know everything in the whole world all at once. That's what the rest of us are here for. It's okay to ask for help. So, not gonna butcher the Latin because I've never been good at it. So, big thing here, markings here, just different slices of things. 25 to 38 millimeters in length. You got that hourglass shape. Males will be smaller and different color, and known to practice sexual cannibalism. And like all spiders, pedipalps can be used to determine sex. Look at that guy's pedipalps.
Huge.
Big, noxious things. And he's different. He's different colors. And so, what I mean by sexual cannibalism is that females will eat the males. Like I said earlier, males are not that, not a big deal in the grand insect spider world. Their goal is to basically mate and run. And so you'll see in other species where they don't even live that long. Some just basically just die after the exertion of mating.
Jesus.
And so what spiders have been doing, depending on the species and like that, and how in depth they are, males will start watching the females. And they will wait for the female to eat something else, or they'll bring in the nuptial gift. And then they'll, depending on the species, they'll do their little mating dance to identify, hey, we're both the same species. And the mating dances are fun to watch if you guys ever want to get that. If need be, I can get you some videos of mating dances. It's a leg wiggle here, it's a shake.
Do it again.
Better dancers than not. But so they'll bring the food to her, or they'll wait till she's already eaten. But once she's eaten, they'll come in there, they'll mate, and then they'll run off before they can eat. Because the males, they want to spread everything like that. And one thing about insects and spiders is they can choose, depending on the species and what we're working with, like some of them can choose what sperm they use when they're laying their eggs. So they'll be storing that, and we can get into another talk if we want to get more into anatomy of insects and spiders and how the spermathecas work and how all the organs work. But that's I feel like that might be a different topic for a later date. But they can choose which sperm they're using. So if she's mated with multiple males, she'd be like, okay, that male was healthier. I'm producing better eggs right now. I'm younger, or I'm more fed. These eggs are better. I'm going to use the best sperm. And then as she gets older, or weaker, it has better or worse eggs, she can use the weaker sperm.
Wow.
I mean, another tangent, but an off tangent of that, some species of arthropods will actually break off their sexual organ inside the female, so she can't mate with other males. That's we can get into the weird sexual mating habits and all the anatomy things at a later date if you guys ever want to, but that's a topic that's
awesome. No, yeah, I was gonna say we're definitely gonna have to do a more extended like taxonomy on spiders in general.
Oh, sorry that didn't come over there. But yeah, the average egg sac is spherical, 9.5 inches diameter overall. I don't know why this double shot, sorry. Eggs will emerge in 26 to 30 days, 255 eggs. Yeah, I don't know why it repeated itself. And spiralings will disperse the geographic areas through ballooning. Okay, but here we go. So, egg sac. So you guys late fall, winter, white to tan in color. And so yes, where you get those nice egg sacs there. They will overwinter and are retained in late season. Spring they emerge, spiralings. They're going to do that ballooning. So if you guys ever watched that old Charlotte's Web, cartoon where they go off and do that, that's true of a lot of spiders. The ballooning helps spread the population out because they don't want to be in the same area competing with each other. Which might seem a little counterintuitive how I said brown recluse populations get large in an area. So some other spiders, web building spiders like that, good number of them, they will balloon. So they'll take their silk, they'll climb up, throw it up there. The wind catches the silk, takes them away. So they're not competing with each other. Because if they come up to each other, they're going to eat each other. Don't know if you guys have ever raised spiderlings in captivity, but you can watch them and they'll eat each other, and you can always tell which one started eating the other one's first because he's going to be bigger.
The bigger one always wins. Whichever one's 10 to
And then,
15%
so
bigger, right?
adult females will live through the winter and produce multiple egg sacs. But if they have a tricky generation and spiderlings come out too late, they will freeze, die during the hard freezes. But the females, they're going to be in these retaining walls, these, areas that are warmer, all these microenvironments which they can be at. All right. Now, since this was the other medically significant one, this bite, only the females bite is what some studies have been showing. But most of it is what we're assuming is just the females. Males and juveniles, both sexes don't bite. The other spiders, they're going to bite when the spider feels trapped against flesh or just trapped. It feels threatened. They don't have the same senses we do. This might be pretty basic, but their exoskeleton is kind of like our airborne's fingernails. We're not getting a lot of information from our fingernails. They have CD on there that can help them tell if something's pushing on them. They can, little sensors and all that stuff. But so basically, that triggers. They feel like they're getting pushed on. They're gonna exploratory bite. They're gonna defensively bite. But in this case, this neurotoxin is going after the neurotoxin, nerve system, causing dull pain, cramping in the muscles, sweating, and vomiting. I always kind of explain when I'm talking to little kids that it's like you really got to go to the bathroom and your stomach's really locked up. And it's going to peak 1 to 3 hours. And again, this is depending on size, it's going to depending on health, it's going to depend on everything. And symptoms will reverse 12 to 24 hours. Deaths are rare, can happen. I have never come across somebody dying of a bite like this in my career. Mainly because, it's children under 30 pounds, which are at the most significant risk. So most of us are going to be fine. Don't let your toddler start digging around in your retaining, by your retaining walls and your fake rocks. And the same thing I tell kids. What do your parents do? When you're in the car, your parents are driving. What do they do at a red light? Stop. And what do you do if you see a red-out spider? Stop.
Right.
Again, sanitation and exclusion. Remove materials around the house where black widows may hide. Seal cracks. Same type of exclusion you would do for pests. But dispose of the spiders, web sacks. Burn. You can vacuum those, knock them down. This is where the exterior treatments are going to come in, and you can start doing that with your webs your head. Break those webs down, stress that spider out, cause him to waste calories, her to waste calories building a new web. And one product you guys can use, I know I don't like endorsing products. There's a product named Web Out that has a niche that is pretty well. It smells terrible. I may or may not have used it in pranks where I sprayed it in somebody's truck because they did something to me.
We use it.
Right in the air intake, so every time
outside it has
see
a very refreshing smell. I don't know if I would ever want to use it inside though. I think it's labeled not to do that stuff.
No one messes with me anymore in my office because of that. But, I keep a bottle of it under my desk. Great for that, especially for sensitive areas, docks, things like that. You can put that there. It breaks the web down, gives you a small residual. Again, it's a natural-based product, so it's not going to last as long as some of the other more advanced chemistries. But these natural products have their role, and it's great in the area you can use it, and it's a great add-on too. And one thing is, if you got some older clients who if they don't smell it, depending on your clientele, if they can't smell it, they don't think it's working. This
They'll definitely
stinks.
smell it, yeah.
They're gonna assume it's working. It's gonna keep people out of the room.
We actually do
think
use it. It actually does have a very good efficacy. We have a lot of customers that we have that use it, and a lot of our technicians. We've got a crew of about 30 guys, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody complain about it. And also, it is labeled to be diluted as well. So if you got some pretty big spider jobs, it could come in handy. Like I said, if you price accordingly for spiders specifically. Word of advice though, make sure you knock down webs before application because it's oily and it will plaster and stain just about anything that's behind it. And you cannot, if you go back to try and wipe it down, it just smears. It becomes a nightmare.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it'll smear it, does all that kind of stuff to it, and then you get that residue. And when working at that, I reckon when you're working with staining and smearing, one thing, a little off topic, spring water. So the more pure the water when you're cleaning, the better results you're going to get. So if like you guys stain windows or you stain baseboards, try coming back with some spring water when you're cleaning it to help. And so with black widows, we're dealing with more of an outside thing. It kind of changes their chemicals. So we get all the common, mainstays that you want to use, and same, voids, cracks, crevice, corners, depending on your labels law tells you what you can use and what you can use where. And basically, if you're treating for black widows, you're still treating for the food source. They're not there for no reason. There is pests there. You know, if they show up in an area because they ballooned and they're in it, they're not going to be there for long, or they're not going to be successful because if there's not a pest for them to eat, they're not going to survive. So today,
Wolf
like I mentioned
spider.
before, hey guys, because this guy is a hunting spider. Sometimes get confused with grass spiders and nursery spiders and the like. So that's why I like eyes. I personally don't do too great looking at abdomens and patterns and all that stuff.
Wolf
But yeah,
spiders can get very large. We oftentimes have
yeah,
customers confuse them with tarantulas. Now, funny enough, we actually do have tarantulas down by the port. So I've had a friend of mine who worked in the area, and he caught one in a big, like Whataburger cup. But we get wolf spiders. I mean, I would say a full leg spread, put the palm of my hand. I mean, these things are, 2.5, 3 inches across. They're huge.
they're great. Yeah, they're great little guys. I mean, if they're there eating, they're basically the spider equivalent of what we're doing. They're pest control.
Right.
Uh, but I always kind of, you know, up them, take them outside. I don't mind them. Now, my wife, on the other hand, they're kill on sight. Um, but she heard that's what how it goes. Uh, but body's range 10 to 35 millimeters, and then get bigger. One funny story, not can't always give you the hard evidence of this, but there was the folklore that in Italy they blamed wolf spiders and thought they were a tarantula, and people who got bit by them were going to die from the poison. And they had to dance it out. So the tartan dance, and you can look up at a medieval Italy spider bite dance. But yeah, there are 240 species, and I'm focusing on the U.S. Four small eyes. You can see the picture. Two large eyes and two eyes on the top. With these guys, and these honey spiders, they have the same thing that cats have, basically. When your cat's in a dark room, you shine that light, and you can see the eyes reflect.
Right.
We can get that with these guys too.
Why?
So you're in a crawl space, you shine the light across, you see some eyes reflecting back. There you go. And this is only seeing the
To
four
reflect
secondary
it.
eyes. You don't get them all across everything.
Oh, how cool.
Oh yeah, they're
Another
fun
good
little
reason.
spider. Yeah, they can be large. Yeah, they can be intimidating. But like I said, of all these spiders, they're there for a reason. There's a pest job, and these guys are helping out. They're there for a reason. They're not medically significant. They're not going to be biting us. If they do, it's because we mess with them, and it's not a you know real issue of them harming us. And notable behaviors. They will carry the egg sac with their spinnerets.
Hmm.
And so, if you ever make the mistake of squishing one of these guys when they have the
Yes.
spinnerets, or in the spinnerets, those little spiralings will come out
Yes.
and just be everywhere.
Yes.
They're beneficial. They're hunting spiders. And what's fun with these guys, the bigger they get, they can take on small amphibians. So
Oh
this is
yeah,
where we
yeah.
start
Small. In
seeing.
fact, I want to say I've seen them even take on like really small newborn mice and stuff.
Oh yeah, they'll take pinkies.
They'll take
They're
pinkies. Yeah, they're some of the bigger ones. I'm telling you, they'll go after just about anything. They'll crawl.
basically, if they can get their legs around it and overpower it, they will attempt to try and feed on it. That's kind of where we get that connection to. It's not. Yeah, but think tarantulas when they're feeding, the pouncing, the trapping, same kind of mindset. Difference in morphology and everything they do, but same kind of hunting mindset. It's a pounce, it's a takedown. Same kind of sanitation. As we get further in, I kind of glance more over this, but exclude them from coming in, and they're not a problem. Remove the pest, harborage, not a problem. They're there for a reason. It's a food source. You control the food source, you can control the predator. Same chemicals apply, same areas apply, you know, exteriors, depending on what chemical you use, some allow you 3 foot up, 3 foot out. Those mulch beds you're dealing with are great for them. If a pest is going to be in there, ants, beetles, it's going to be a conducive environment for a spider. So same kind of, unlikely to see something in the middle of your yard. If, tree lines, leaf litter, you know, near downspouts because you got some water there and you got the leaf litter. Those areas are where you're going to see them because they're conducive. Then you go into a home, less likely of wolf spiders, but insect conducive spots, the predators can be there. Grass spiders, this is where we kind of get the same kind of thing here. You know,
Yeah.
brownish tan, markings
White
across the
stripes.
abdomen. But look at this guy. His abdomen kind of tapers like that. Another reason why I use eyes, because abdomens are difficult. 14 species we're looking at this. It's a genus of funnel webs. They get distinct bands on the legs. This one's not as, predominant. Prominent spinnerets. Again, that picture, not so great. And they'll have 2 dark bands running down the cephalothorax. So there's his bands.
So, do they have a different mechanism for how they're able to climb in comparison to, like ants and roaches and other insects?
Web assisted or not. So I can get to more details about webs and the things like that in a minute. But they do climb a little different. They have different mechanisms in their bodies. One thing you'll notice when a spider dies is how predominant that curling up is of the legs
Yes.
because it's all
Yes.
hydraulic press, basically. So they stop pumping that fluid, everything kind of curls up and in. And so they're spanning different, they're got a lot of reach, like if somebody's mountain climbing, they can, reach out and grab different grips and move a little different. Same kind of like surface tension, all the other things that apply, but they are a little bit handier at their moving up and climbing abilities.
It's really cool.
Thing about these guys, they're short lived. So about a year. And then if you get a good picture of them, or you get a good look at them, there's your predominant spinnerets, there's your markings. So this is probably one of the best pictures we got. Or I have of them. Bands, spinnerets. Males die 2 to 3 weeks after mating, and females deposit the egg sac in late winter and die shortly after laying the eggs. Yeah, like you said, spiders have a better ability of climbing compared to other. Also, a lot of it can be web assisted, and we don't notice that. Even if they're not a web building spider, they still have a silk thing, and they can use that in different ways to help assist climbing, help assist travel, you know, speed webs, resting areas, and all that kind of things for them.
Yeah, I want to say
A
I
lot of
think I
times, they can
saw
even throw out
a
if they're crossing large distances, they can actually fling web out and let the wind take it, and that becomes like an anchor, and then they'll kind of jump from there with it and use it like a little cord, or they'll
yeah.
bridge it across.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think I saw like a documentary one time that talked about these very specific type of spiders that could basically build like a kind of like a small parachute that the wind took it off, and then they were able to travel pretty decent distances
And
using
they'll
just
balloon, they get all that stuff for them. They're not large, and they can hit that wind and do pretty well with it. And again, this is another beneficial insect. Grasslands, lawns, forests. Typically not seen in the house. This is, you're going to get people saying they saw them when they're outside, and then you got to kind of do the talk like, well, that's where they belong, type thing. But yeah, again, bands, black or dark stripes, predominant spinnerets. And as always, you can look at the eyes, but it's not great. In sanitation exclusion, same kind of material. And I skipped that because I want to really get into jumping spiders because they're fun.
yes, everybody's
But
favorite, right? The most photogenic spider there is.
all right, big old eyes. And what's fun about these guys is they will track your hand movements if you get close enough, and they'll do that little dance and moving around and do all that fun stuff. And they come in great colors. They're very vibrant. They're energetic. They move, and like I said here, they're just kind of cute.
Just cute, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're just cute for a spider. I mean, like if you had to pick something, and like a lot of media where they're showing spiders as cute, they're basically a jumping spider.
Yep.
Now, the front 4 legs are typically larger than the back 4, and then the body length's 1 to 25 millimeters. And these guys have the fun mating dances. There's a bunch of them. There's over 6,000 species. Yeah. Again, they're in the house because there's a food source for them. And likely if they got in the house, it's an accident. These guys are going to be on your plants, your landscaping, your flowering plants, and they can vary in color and they can have all that going for them. And they're actively hunting. So if these guys were really a pest for anybody, they brought them in. They brought all their plants in for some reason, or they clipped a bunch of flowers and brought them in, and that's why they're there. This isn't a pest. This is definitely one of the ones where you gotta definitely tell them you can just let that outside. It's that's not a pest. That is, I like to call them spider bros. That's
Spider bro.
they're good. Leave them be. Yeah, and here you go. Here he is doing his little dance and everything. Is that playing for you guys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there he is. And his little movements. And these guys will use silk as a safety line when jumping. And they will build pup tents to shelter and sleep and molt. So not like a full tent, but a full web, but just little shelters for him. And the body length of the jump spiders can range from the body length. So 125 millimeters, great eyesight, and just super, if I can't get it.
What are they? They typically just hunting like ants, like real small insects.
Yeah, yeah. And then even in some cases, pollinators too. So if they're near those areas, they will come and jump in on them and get them. So if they can they can pounce on it, they can overpower it, type thing. It's think smaller insects, ants. Nothing. There's no like big cool stories of like jumping spiders taking down large stuff, but maybe some cases the bigger ones getting bigger things. But there he goes. They're just cute little guys. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, like all spiders, most of them are not significant pests to the homeowner. Most of the time, homeowners complain about black widows, brown recluse. You guys in the northwestern areas probably looking at hobo spiders, which thankfully they've been downgraded in medical significance. And we'll get to sac spiders in a minute, but yeah, I put them near the end. Again, focuses on exclusion and all that stuff. You don't really need to worry about, especially these guys. Just if you have a client who complains about them a lot, tell them they need to basically check their plants more when they bring them in, their flowers and things like that. These guys are definitely an occasional thing, and they're not going to be a pest. They're just something people see. And here we have the yellow sacks. Like I said before, not always as common. Some studies should say that these are the most common biters. When these guys bite, it kind of festers up almost like a little pimple. Um,
yeah. Okay.
when
I think
I
everybody's probably been bit by one of these spiders then, or
yeah,
something similar too.
214 species, yellow to beige, 5 to 10 millimeters, and the New World species are daily of them. Now, when I was a young kid, we had just moved into a new house, out basement. The previous people weren't doing the yard maintenance, and it was like our first week there. So tons of leaf litter around the walkout basement. My bedroom was in the basement, so I'm laying down, and I've gotten a couple bites, a couple weeks, and just, it happens. I'm laying in bed. I look up, and we had disturbed them, moving all that stuff. The cracks, where the ceiling meets the wall, had tons of yellow sac spiders all hanging out. Probably about 20, because we had recently disturbed the leaf litter, and they all come inside looking for warmth and shelter and all that stuff.
Ooh.
Well, not
That's the,
medically significant, but
no, but that's the stuff
not a
of a
great thing to
horror
see
story,
here.
though. Yeah, I was gonna say that's something that would
And
be in
thankfully,
a cheesy Halloween movie right there.
thankfully, I'm second generation industry, so I went upstairs and said, Dad, do something. This is before I got into entomology and all that stuff. So I'm like, no, I ain't touching any of that crap. You go deal with that. So he treated, went away. But yeah, leaf litter. That's a big thing for him. They were right there. They were right next to the sliding glass doors. Great way to come in and out of the house. Great, everything there. It happens. They weren't a major problem. They were just, there. And nobody wants to see spiders in their bedroom. All right, this is one of the last ones I'm touching on because it came in the news. And what does this guy look like to most of everybody here?
That's
Garden
a
spider.
I was gonna say that's a big old weaver garden spider, man. That thing is huge.
Yeah.
Big old yellow
So they look
spider.
a lot alike. So
These are the
we're
ones
gonna
that
get
have
that.
the zigzag pattern associated with them underneath it, right?
Yeah. 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 So the pattern there changes things on the back end. I don't have any great photos of that one because I didn't want to touch on this one too much because it's not a big one in the United States yet. But it could be. It has reasons. It has the ability, but it's being introduced through travel and things like that and trade. And we've only seen it in a couple areas, which I'll touch on that map in a bit. What I wanted to talk about with these guys is perception, um, and how the media can take that and everyone's going to think they have them when they can just have garden spiders. One thing we get here a lot in Indiana is the kissing bug fear. So we have in the U.S. we have a relatable species. It has all the abilities to transmit Chagas, like a South American version. The difference is one, we don't have the reservoir for it, and two, they do something slightly different. So the South American version of the kissing bug will actually defecate on host after it feeds. The North American version is not known to do that. But people don't care about that. All they care about is these bugs look alike. So that's one thing we got to remember when we're dealing with these, types of these media pests, which this is kind of the latest one. I don't know if you guys have followed it, but they did eradicate the murder hornet in the U.S.
Yes, yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah. So there's things for it. It's getting there. But the other one, oh, there you go. So you get the nice pattern of him underneath there. Look at him. Often, females are bigger than males. Weak venom, unlikely to bite. So we don't have to worry about that bite type thing. We don't have to worry about all that kind of, things. They're just big. They're just large. They
Yeah,
look
big and
intimidating.
scary. Yeah, black and yellow, typically
Nobody
associated
wants to
with.
see that thing. No one wants to walk outside and have that right next to their face.
Right.
And here's our range. This is why I'm not too concerned about it. It's been spotted here and here. Yeah, that's not to say it can't show up other areas. It's not to say it can't spread. It's not to say it can't have that, you know, niche. One reason why I'm glad I don't live in Florida. Florida's a great spot for everything to show up at. So more power to all you guys who treat in Florida because you've got everything that can happen there. You're in the tropics. We've had cases of they're saying malaria has been popping up in Florida. So, enjoy that Florida text. So that range could expand. That could become a thing. The potential is there. But right now it's not, and it's just been seeing these areas here. And so we're going to cover some brief spider treatment areas real quick. Inside the home. So cabinets, drawers, closets. Under the bed, behind the um, EVEs. These areas where they're adjacent to human activity, they're adjacent to and their pest activity, but they're not bothered. How often is everyone cleaning under their bed?
Right.
How often is everyone pulling out cabinets to check? How often are we sitting at a desk, or we're playing our video games and stuff, and we have dropped food or we have spilt, a drink? Oh, there we go. We created a good spot for ants. What follows ants? Spiders. What if any kind of pest? I'm looking at my cat right now. She eats her food. She's gonna knock some food out of that bowl. It's gonna go behind their cat stand. That's a great spot for ants. I get ants there twice a year. It happens. If it's a good spot for a pest, an insect pest, it's going to be a good spot for a spider. So remember, you're not just treating for the spider, you're treating for the conditions and its food source because they all need food, water, and harborage. In just this case, the food happens to be an insect. And then habitat reduction. Look at this. How often do we all see garages and outbuildings and homes like this?
Oh yeah, you got green,
Yeah.
weeds all grown up under the siding. You got leaf piles, wood to soil contact,
Right there.
big overgrown
You got
vines.
fences cracked, you got vines, you got everything here. Do you want to bet that this isn't fully sealed?
Oh yeah.
And black oaks will love that. And not great here, but I bet you these
Yep.
trees are
Trees,
touching the
lapis.
house.
Yep. Laptop
So what
mold.
happens if your tree is touching your house? What are you likely to get?
Definitely carpenter ants. Just ants in
Carpenters.
general.
Yeah,
All ants. Every type of
yeah.
ant.
And they're right there, and I bet that's a bedroom right here. Yeah. And then you got it along there, you got it all here. Brush that leaf litter back, take care of those weeds. There's the downspout. So what do we got right here? We got harborage, likely food, and we got water. Good black widow spot. Good brown recluse spot. And that's probably where they're keeping some stuff. They keep, other stuff. Good, get bit by the brown recluse, call it a day.
And that's your average everyday home. I mean, most homes look about that well maintained. I mean, not you know.
And then, like I mentioned, when I stress web removal again, it wastes energy, it limits food intake, it stresses the spider. So you got your homes. That's why web string is a big deal. Some of you can use web out on your webster heads after you remove some stuff you're not sticky. Some people will use, they'll treat the webster heads. You get away a lot of times with just removing that. That is still pest control. You may not be applying a pesticide, but that is just a facet of it. That's not, if we can get away with not applying a pesticide, that's still a good thing. You
Right,
know,
right.
one, it cuts
Mechanical
costs,
pest
but
control. I mean, it's
yeah, yes, it cuts costs, but two, it's still pest control, even if it's not chemical control. So we got to remember RPM. And we all deal with clients who are, a little older or just don't care. Just nuke it, just do this. It's more to it. There's a cultural aspect, and that kind of comes to it with explaining what spiders are good and spiders are bad. But even just basic web removal is great because you're removing all that or all this. You are taking away resting sites. You are disturbing them. You're running them off. And everything just looks cleaner when you remove the webs. And like I said, prey reduction. Here's the common things they would eat at. Maybe not so much. Ross's field, but I thought it was a good picture. These are things we're eating. So think about that when you are treating. What other pests am I seeing? Yeah, the client might just be saying they're dealing with spiders, but they are feeding on something. So finding what they're feeding on, reducing those pests, reducing the habitat, all goes a long way. It's not, nothing is in a vacuum. There is something there for a predator to feed on. So finding the prey, reducing them. That's one thing I've always said when I was, dealing with our own clients is if you are looking at it, you have to look at the big picture. Yeah, you might just hate spiders and you don't care about the ants or you don't care about the beetles or whatever else is going on, which in most cases, people don't care about beetles unless they're in the home. But, that's a food source. That is, it's not just that. So it's a bigger picture treatment across the board than it is just, treating for spiders. All right. And then I have questions if you guys have them. I'll stop that soon. I just had fun looking at that. Remind me of screensavers.
screensaver. Well, mostly the questions that I kind of had related to, you know, pest control, like tips and tricks, right? So is there a like you were talking about beetles, right? Sometimes they like to eat beetles. Is there oftentimes a trending pest that you see or trending food source that might indicate a particular type of spider? So if you see these, look out for these. In the way that sometimes we're told, if you see a lot of fire ant activity suddenly, look out for termite activity because termites and fire ants tend to inhabit the same areas. Is there anything like that?
Well, uh, so a honey spider, think about their environment. They are going to be based on the ground more likely than a web-based spider. So a web-based spider has a better opportunity of getting, moths and flying insects, whereas your hunting spiders are going to be on the ground, terrestrial, so ants and beetles and roaches and things like that. Not to say you can't sometimes get things caught in webs, but they all have their kind of niches where they're better suited for it. If you go out and you're doing something on your own time, you're not you see the tools in your tool belt. So the web spiders have a better chance of catching a flying insect than the ground spiders. So if you're seeing a bunch of moths, you know it could happen. More web based. Like if you're seeing moths and spiders, web based probably. If you're seeing ants, you're going to see more ground spiders because those ants have to find a way to crawl into the web,
Right.
which might happen. You could see that. The spider gets lucky,
Possible,
puts
but
their web in a area that has a bunch of aphids, and we have a honeydew type situation. And there's spiders that mimic ants and things like that. So we have the whole gambit there. But in this case, the ones we've spoken about, there's a little bit of a divide there.
so, like many other insects, we see, imidacloprid, neonics, and then pyrethroids on the list of options for treatment. Um, do those modes of actions for those different products, are those not necessarily, I mean, those active ingredients, do those is there a better efficacy one way or the other? Do spiders respond to neonics differently? That makes them a little bit more susceptible. I guess the reason why I say that is some products like Temperate FX, right, are labeled for bed bugs, spiders, and I think ants. Um, so can you speak to that as to why we may be using pyrethroids here in the United States, why other places might not be using pyrethroids to control their spiders?
Well, yeah, it all comes to come down to the what the chemical companies basically tested for when they were applying for their labels and the favorability of the agencies they were applying to. So we have a bit more openness in the US label wise in a lot of cases, whereas in Europe they have banned a lot more stuff because they're worried about secondary things, pollinator protection, and which we're worried about it here too. It's just it's a little bit more open. I think there might be a trust issue uh, between that, which I can't speak on, European markets. I just know they tend to react a bit faster than we do. And it's also kind of a little different. I mean, there's things we're allowed here in the U.S. that they're not allowed there, and vice versa. And we can see that change from state to state too. Um, so it's just it depends comes down to what the
So
chemical
say
company
I
wanted
got
to.
a report of a place that's got a lot of pest pressures, a lot of insects, grassy fields surrounding, say kind of like an industrial type facility, commercial client, and they've got a lot of wolf spiders, right? They need knockdown. I've got you know both pyrethroids and imidacloprid neonics on the truck. Uh, what would you recommend for that first treatment?
I mean, it's going to be dependent on the action thresholds that you know what you're dealing with. If you're needing a faster um, knockdown, and you need them to be, quicker. I would go with, those pesticides that you have that are great for, quick knockdown, those, if you're wanting something for a longer term, residual type aspect, then your micro and caps and your demand like products, those kind of ones that can actually focus on giving you a longer term situation. I know, demand you're looking at, lambda cyhalothrin, you know,
Would would it be worthwhile to incorporate like uh, broadcast granular uh, uh, bait treatment in order to take care of, like, obviously, like the food sources, stuff like that? Really get into
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to.
Like we've mentioned, it's more than just treating for spiders. That's kind of the gray area you're working with, you know, where it says, you know, like if you have a contract with spiders, make sure things are being sold with not just spiders, because if they're there, there's a pest there. There's no bait that is labeled for spiders right now that I can think of off the top of my head. I might be something out there, but it's not there. It's not gonna feed on it. It might be
Right.
saying that it can come onto, come in contact with things like that. But yeah, like you said, if you're reducing the population they're feeding on, you're reducing their population too.
Right.
No one's going to stay around if they can't eat.
Right. 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 Trying to think of some other good applicable. Do you notice if spiders respond to ECs or like in their liquid form better or worse than suspended caps, like micro caps and stuff like that? Or um, I've heard, geez, probably an old folklore tale now from many years ago. I want to say I heard something like, spiders, they don't drag their bellies, they walk upright, and so there's very little area for them to come into contact with insecticides. But one of those areas is those jointed knuckles, right, where there's a softer, fleshier uh, uh, area in between the legs, and that products that are volatilizing or very odorous, stuff like Web Out, right? that those products tend to irritate or come into contact with those areas a little bit more readily than um, like your residual products that are non-odorous. So like tend to see a lot of acaricides that are very odorous or outside only use products. Is there something to that? Is there science to that, or is that an old like folklore tale?
I've yet to actually go into depth with these studies and watch them, but just based off of the pest itself and how they move differently compared to other insects, they're going to have points of their body that, just like our bodies, that aren't as, rigid or as, hardy as others.
Right.
When we're doing I don't know about, in your state, but in ours, they list areas that are more exuberant to pesticides and which can be more acceptable. So they can have areas like that. The spider it does walk a little differently than anything else. It does, treat differently. It's not the same, you know, pest. It is a different thing. So you have to, and the pesticide's only going to be as good as what it's coming in contact with. But the
So
spider's not going to.
here's another question too, a kind of another technician folklore tale worth asking about. Um, there's a lot of concern about secondary poisoning when it comes to rodenticides and these first gen and second gen products and stuff. Are spiders ingesting insects that have died from or have come into contact with uh, insecticides, and is there a secondary kill effect, or is there anything of that nature that could be happening, or even just like in the process of eating them, that that consumption of the chitin that's come into contact with the insecticide or something like that. Are they eating it? Are they eating the bugs? Are they accidentally eating the insecticide at the same time?
I have not seen any studies that would give me a good data to talk about with that and say this or that. Um, we'd have to look at the metabolites in their system, how much of the pesticide is actually still active or volatile in the system compared to what they're eating.
Right.
So, is the insect ingesting, he's injecting X, and how much is left for Y in the spider would be the question. Now, I haven't seen enough studies on that to really give a great answer on, that is the problem, or, secondary ones. I can
Maybe
definitely
I was
look
gonna
into that
say,
one and get you.
yeah, yeah. Maybe that's something we probe around in the community and find out. Does anybody know if there's a study out there, an article talking about it, and maybe we can pull the author of that article and find out.
Just like a quick glance, there's yeah, I have to be more into it, but yeah. It also depends on what they're coming in contact with and secondary poisoning. Uh it can ingest it, there's various sensibilities that I can't point you to, you know, a study that's gonna say this is,
The thing occurring.
gonna
Okay,
happen,
fair enough. Just some of those again, those old wives' tales, those folklore that you hear as a technician from time to time, and you just kind of wonder, okay, is this just something that somebody made up somewhere along the way? Is this backed in science somewhere? You know, uh, I don't know. It's just there's a lot of those. I think you mentioned the cheese on the snap traps, or one of our members talked about sneeze or cheese on rodent traps, and how they don't really even like cheese that much. It's like, well, where did that start then? Somewhere that had to start somewhere. It's like
Oh yeah. And I'd recommend frosting. Frosting does well.
frosting. Oh yes, right, yes, nice and sugary. Ah, all right. Well, man, I think we've got a couple of the good debunkers in there. I really appreciate you taking so much of the time to put together the presentation. Looks like it was a little bit later for some of the people, so we didn't get any more questions for the night, but that's all right. We'll definitely be taking the broadcast and putting it up out there on the YouTubes and Spotify, and we'll make sure we get the edits done right, so we can cut out those first couple of minutes of
And I can
technical
send
goofy.
you the full presentation too if they need that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have that on the Discord so we can refer back to it, especially for the study groups. If anybody's interested in being a part of the study groups, make sure you're tagging it in the Discord, and making sure we're utilizing some of these channels. We're using them for the feeds, we're using them for the talks, but of course they can be used anytime, day or night, if a couple people want to hop in here and pull up some of this information. So thank you again for putting it all together. And LTK agents, make sure you stay sharp, stay connected, and stay legendary.
Yeah, anytime. I got overwintering pests. That'll be done in a couple weeks. I present that in March. Whenever you guys need that.
Perfect. Yeah, we will definitely be getting another one thrown on the calendar. Brandon, thank you, sir. You should have a blessed night.
See you guys then. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the Licensed to Kill podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful, informative, and engaging. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It really helps us to reach more listeners like you. Have a question or a topic that you'd like us to cover in a future episode? Connect with us through our Facebook, YouTube, and most importantly, our Discord. Until next time, this is your host, Marcus, reminding you to stay sharp, stay legendary, stay connected.